Good morning.
From Mark chapter 1 and verses 29 to 39. And this is Jesus heals many people. As soon as Jesus left the meeting place with James and John, they went home with Simon and Andrew. When they got there, Jesus was told that Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with fever. Jesus went to her. He took hold of her hand and helped her up. The fever left her, and she served them a meal. That evening, after sunset, all who were sick or had demons in them were brought to Jesus. In fact, the whole town gathered around the door of the house. Jesus healed all kinds of terrible diseases and forced out a lot of demons. But the demons knew very early. But the demons knew who he was, and he did not let them speak. Very early the next morning, Jesus got up and went to a place where he could be alone and pray. Simon and the others started looking for him. And when they found him, they said, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "We must go to the nearby towns so that I can tell the good news to those people. This is why I have come." And Jesus went to Jewish meeting places everywhere in Galilee, where he preached and forced out demons. Amen.
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 I started my message on healing actually last week, and one of the things I pointed out that in the Bible you hear all about these demons, and how this is in the 21st century and people think, what's that about? But back in those days, that's what people felt was responsible for mental illness. And as I explained to you, having taught emotionally disturbed kids for like 15 years, I had some students I know were possessed. It's hard to believe, but it was true, especially when they speak in a different voice. But the kind of healing I wanted to talk about today is the healing of broken relationships. So many of us in our lives at some point have had a broken relationship. And reconciliation is really which will make us whole. I know two sisters. One is Jewel and one is Margie. And Jewel was the social butterfly in the family. She had lots of friends. She was always very popular. And she had lots of boyfriends. And one of the boyfriends that she brought home for the family to meet was Walter, who was an ensign in the Navy. And she was very impressed that she had this boyfriend. But at the same time, she had a lot of other boyfriends too. So she brought him home, and he was at that time more looking for a wife than just a casual relationship. So he met the younger sister, Margie, and he thought that she would be a much more suitable person to have a life with than Jewel, the social butterfly. So he Margie the next week and then started going out with her. Now Jewel, who took pride in being able to get about any guy she could, was very upset. And when Margie and Walter finally got married, Jewel boycotted the wedding. And there were years and years and years where she wasn't even speaking to her sister. And then finally, reconciliation took place. When she had joined a church and had a pastor that was very good at pastoral counseling. And she said, I feel bad that I haven't talked to my sister in years. And he said, was there anything that you could have done differently? Can you hold any part of your life responsible for this? And she said, well, I wasn't just dating him. I had a lot of other little boyfriends going around. And I said, was he aware of it? And she said, well, everybody knew that I just really dated heavily. So I said, so the pastor said, well, you know, it wasn't all your sister's fault. And she's not the one that actually pursued him. He pursued her. And she started thinking about it, and thinking about it, and thinking about it. And she realized that the pastor was right. Her sister did not go and try to take her boyfriend away. He said he thought that she would be a better person to be a life partner. And so finally she called her sister and said, I'm sorry for my attitude. And they made up and became best friends. But it was a long period of time. There is reconciliation. Just recently, I spoke with a person who is well, she just retired now. She was a prison chaplain in a men's high security prison in Asheville, North Carolina. And you might wonder, how did a woman ever become a chaplain in a men's high security prison? Well, it wasn't easy. There was a job opening, she applied, and somehow got it. And there was a lot of resentment. But one thing that she could do is that in a prison, you cannot be religion specific. You have to be willing, even if you're Christian, you have to be willing to minister to people of all different faith traditions. And one of her regular attendees was a fellow who had a very short fuse. And he was a Wiccan. Okay? Male witch. But witch is not really a good term. He practiced the pagan religions. And he said, Chap, I need to talk to you. And she said, yes. And so he sat down in her office and said that there was another prisoner there who was really saying some pretty ugly stuff about him. And he was not going to tolerate that. And he really wanted to, you know, kind of take his lights out. Except that he only had 6 more years left. And he didn't want to, you know, add more years to his term. What should I do? And she said, I know this must sound very novel, but people who usually say bad things about other people often will change if you personally invite them to be with you, share something with them. Because they had a time in this prison where if they earned some money, and you could buy coffee, and you could buy chips and things like that. So he said, oh no, people will think I'm a wimp if I do something like that. And she said, well, think about it. It would sure save you from, you know, 6 more additional years if you punch his lights out. Oh yeah, that might work. So he went back to his prison cell, gave it a lot of thought. And then when they got out, he talked to this fellow and said, I'd like to sit down with you and I'll get you a cup of coffee and we have a bag of chips. So they sat down together, drank their coffee, and he said, would you like some chips? And the fellow, yeah, I could use some, those look good. Well, he opened up the bag of chips, and the fellow ate all of the chips, okay? And the way she tells the story, the meal of reconciliation was a bag of chips. And that's really how healing takes place. We have physical healing, we have emotional healing, we have healing that people feel broken are now feeling whole. But in particular, we have reconciliation. And if you aren't reconciled with everyone in your life who's done you wrong, this is the time to start doing it. And think about how you, if you were an adult when this happened, may have played a part in whatever it was that they did. And if you were a child, sometimes you just have to let go and let God. Sounds very, very trite, doesn't it? But it's the only way. Because what will happen, you'll just have this anger and this bitterness in your heart. And it really needs to let go. And through Christ, who I feel is the way, taught us reconciliation. Because he taught us unconditional love and forgiveness and acceptance of all of God's people. And isn't that what we're all about? Amen.
Amen.